When we think of old steam engines, George Stephenson's rocket and Puffing Billy spring to mind. They sit proudly with their work done in the National Collection, with the Railway Museum housing Rocket and the Science Museum looking after Puffing Billy. But what of the oldest engine running? Surprisingly, considering the UK is the birthplace of steam engines, the oldest running locomotive actually resides over 4,600 miles away. The East Indian Railway operated from June 1845 and ran for over 100 years. It was founded on money raised in London, with Rowland MacDonald Stephenson as the first director. Together with 3 assistants, the quartet travelled to India with a view to surveying the area and to see if a line from Calcutta to Delhi would be a viable and profitable option. It was done on the quiet and was concluded that if the land was given to them at no cost, then the twin track bed could be laid at roughly £15,000 per mile. By working with the notorious East India Company, nearly 200,000 tons of raw iron in the form of rails, chairs, nuts and bolts were transported from the UK to India, and considering the Suez Canal wasn't created, the ships had to travel around South Africa, adding weeks onto construction. The first lines were opened to the public on the 15th of August 1854, with trains running pretty much straight away at full capacity, with the UK providing much of the locomotives and the rolling stock. One of the engines was number 22. Built in Leeds by Kitson, Thompson and Hewitson in 1855, it was sent to India as soon as it was created, and when it touched soil was given the name 1895. 1895 was used to haul mail trains in West Bengal and ran between the company's primary stations at Howrah and Raniganj. 2 years later, the engine's role changed and it was required to haul troops trains during the Indian Rebellion, eventually being used as a supporting engine for the permanent way and maintenance crews until 1909. In 1909, the engine was decommissioned and removed from the tracks. It sat outside Howrah station as a symbol to passengers and tourists of the station's history before being moved to a railway training school for students to study and examine. In 1972, the Indian government recognised that as the engine being the last of its class and for its long history, it would forever be a national treasure, and following the success of another locomotive restoration project, plans were drawn to overhaul the now named Fairy Queen to working order. Plans took time, and it took over 30 years to restore the Fairy Queen back to working order. In 1997, the engine pulled its first train for 88 years, taking passengers on a 2-day excursion through the stunning Indian countryside. It was certified a year later as the oldest steam locomotive in regular operation. The accolades continued to flow as it received a National Tourism Award for its service from the Prime Minister of India. The engine suffered a major blow in 2011 when looters broke into the engine shed and stole parts of it. When it was sent for repair, the parts themselves were practically irreplaceable. Parts had to be procured from all over the world, and if they were not available, they had to be machined from scratch. It may sound simple to make an engine part, but when access to the engine plans were limited to nil, the techniques used to make those parts were lost to history, and the machinery was a world away from what the manufacturers used. This was a daunting task. The engine had to be rebuilt from the ground up, and after a lengthy rebuild, the Fairy Queen was steamed up and returned to service in time for Christmas 2012, and the engine has been running well ever since. The Fairy Queen has a new home too. It now takes pride of place at the National Railway Museum in New Delhi and is still regularly steamed. Compared to some engines, the Fairy Queen is one of the lightest engines built, sitting at a modest 26 tonnes. Its twin cylinders can produce about 130 horsepower and can reach a sedate speed of about 25 miles an hour. Its 2-2-2 arrangement was originally designed by Robert Stephenson and Sons and was adapted to run on broad gauge track. The engine's most striking features, though, is its elaborate decorations. From its green livery, the striking star painted on the smoke box, the Indian flag on the funnel, and of course the impressive crown. The Fairy Queen is certainly one of the most unique engines. It's old, but it's no slouch, and even at 167 years old, it's still able to show the young upstart engines just how to pull trains. And in style too.